Welcome to my video, and today we're going to be talking about the introduction to my new book. And as part of this discussion, I've got a PowerPoint presentation for you to review what's the introduction, how the book came to be, and what the future looks like for YouTube videos related to the book. And then after we're done with that, we'll talk a little bit at the end for next steps. Right. So what I want to do right now is to give you an introduction to risk assessments. And basically, this is the beginning of a review of my book, which you'll see in a minute how I plan on doing this. So I started my book in 2019, and at the end of a fairly substantial career in the industry. And during that time, I was actually writing the book with the intention of doing self-publishing. Well, in probably 2020 or so, Phil Rothstein had sent out a note on his email that basically said, if anyone's interested in writing a book, send me your book idea. Well, I'd already written some chapters. I already had a table of contents. I already knew basically what I wanted to do. So I sent it to Phil, and after a very positive and brief conversation, it worked out that he was going to let me go ahead and publish with his company. So the end result was in August 2020, the book was finally published, and it is now available at Amazon and at Rothstein. And if you're interested, you can take a look on the sites. Well, in 2021, the book was also given an award from ASIS International, and it was for the Security Industry Book of the Year, and that was quite an honor. Really appreciate that. In case you haven't heard of ASIS, it's been around since 1955, and essentially it's a global security community of people who are like everything from chief security officers to CEOs to security veterans, consultants, and so forth. Well, anyway, this is the first in a series of YouTube videos that I plan on issuing on the book. And ultimately, what I do plan on doing is establishing a Udemy course, which will, of course, incorporate a lot of the YouTube videos and will cover the book on conducting risk assessments for critical infrastructure. So this is the beginning of this multiple videos sessions that will be going on in the future. What I want to do is just offer a quick introduction. And this is also from the book on what is risk and what is a risk assessment. So what is risk? There's a very classic equation which is at the top of this slide, and risk is equal to threat times vulnerability times consequences. And you can see a breakdown there into threat times vulnerability is the probability, and consequences is the impact. Now, we'll talk a lot about this later on in subsequent videos when I do the chapter on risk. So what is risk? Risk is a situation where you are exposed to danger. And I'm going to use this little cartoon here as an example. So for example, the man in the blue car is a threat. He is the angry driver, okay? He's the threat. The vulnerability, there's actually a couple of vulnerabilities. One is the dainty bumper on the back of the green car and the dainty neck on the driver of the green car. Anyway, you can get a sense of threat times vulnerability, and in this case, the threat is very strong, the vulnerability is quite weak, and we're going to have a fairly high risk of a problem. A risk assessment, there's a definition, and I do want to go over this because it will help you in the future. But essentially, it's a process. And it's a process of identifying and estimating and prioritizing risks to the organization. And there's an official definition, if you will, from the NIST document. NIST is National Institute of Science and Technology, and it's a guide for conducting risk assessments. And if you're wondering, risk assessments do offer a lot of benefits. They offer help with reducing long-term costs because you uncover issues before they blow up and become a true mess. They also improve future operations and aid the organization. Helps break down organizational barriers. This allows for example, maintenance and operations people to be closely working together. You can also do self-analysis. So in other words, you're doing the review, not having a regulator come in and do it. You can facilitate internal and external communications, for example, between the plants and the corporate offices. And again, help the enterprise avoid major accidents and events and increased costs. The risk assessment process really has three primary phases. There's phase one, which is the pre-assessment planning. Phase two, which is your site assessment or your on-site work. And then phase three is the reporting. And the graphic on the right comes straight out of the book, and we're going to go into that in just a moment. So for example, in phase one, this is just a very high level review of what's in the pre-assessment planning, but you've got things ranging from identifying your team members, identifying what your goals are, and why are you doing this assessment, taking a look at all the artifacts that you have access to. Then you have an assessment plan, your team meetings, your kickoff calls to the client, and then making data requests back to the client. And of course, there's other things such as getting equipment prepared, packing, travel planning, and so forth. Phase two is the hard work. This is the heavy lifting. This is where you're doing the on-site work. And this is just a very high level review of how to take a look at this process. So for instance, on the site assessment, you'll be doing interviews of people, you'll be doing inspections, taking photographs, doing observations, and we're going to talk at length later on, not today, but in future videos, what observations are. Then we have architecture reviews and network reviews and application reviews and etc. And this all feeds into the assessment plan or is driven by the assessment plan. And then we start identifying strengths and weaknesses. And then once you have those established, then you have an exit meeting with the customer to say, all right, here are the strengths and weaknesses that we've identified while here on site. And then finally, the reporting. And I've got chapters on this and discussions on this also in the book. And really the intent is to obviously generate a report, but the reason why you're generating the report is to document what the issues are, to establish what needs to be done to reduce the risks to the plant owner, and as well as reduce the risks to the environment and to the local population. So that's really high level summary of what's going on with this particular section. This is the beginning of multiple videos on my book. And what we'll be doing next in the next week or so, or a few weeks, is starting out with the foundations section of the book. And the first chapter to be discussed is critical infrastructure. All right, let's continue. All right, well, thanks for taking time to see this discussion for the introduction of my book. And if you have a chance, please subscribe to my channel and also press like. And the next video that will be coming up relative to the book will be chapter 1 on critical infrastructure. Thanks a lot and have a good day.